When I was 23, I was working at Good Morning America, and I had just been promoted to the Field and Series unit, which was the unit where you could go out into the field and produce pieces and do live remotes, and they were called shoots, and it was a dream come true. One of the first assignments that came up was to go and produce a remote at the Field of Dreams. Now, who by a show of hands remembers the movie The Field of Dreams? Okay, that's pretty good. So we all know it was with Kevin Costner. It's a magical movie about baseball, and there's a real baseball field in the middle of a cornfield, right? I had no competition, though, for this assignment because it was July 4th weekend, a 3-day weekend, and everybody wanted Friday off. So they're like, Allison, you can go to Dubuque, Iowa, and produce the remote. So being a New York City girl, I had to go and I had to rent a car, which was not great for me. I wasn't a big driver, and my mom was not happy. But I was more worried about getting lost because I'm not great with directions since I'm a New Yorker and I grew up on a grid. But I flew into Dubuque, I rented my car, I went to the farm, I met Don Larson, who was the farmer, and it looked exactly like that picture. And I figured out what all my shots would be for the next morning, and I was so excited. Went back to the Best Western. The next morning, I got up at 3:30 in the morning. Gave myself a half an hour to get to the site because with Good Morning America, you need to be there 3 hours before to get set up with the satellite trucks. So as I'm driving to the site, it's pitch black, and I had no idea how dark it would be on rural roads. And I'm driving and trying to remember my way to this farm, and the air conditioner was just blasting on me. So I went to turn it off, but being an inexperienced driver, while I turned it off, this arm also parroted those moves, and I swerved off the road. I hit the accelerator instead of the brake in my panic, careened off the road, hit something, and my car flipped twice, and then just kept going until it stopped in the middle of a field at 3:30 in the morning on a holiday weekend before cell phones existed. So when the car stopped, I looked down, the door was open, and everything above my left leg, above the muscle, was sliced open and sitting in my lap, hanging by some skin. And my first thought was, my mom is going to kill me. My second thought was, I just can't sit here and bleed to death. I got to do something about this. So I put my leg back on, I took my shirt off, I tied up my leg, and I got out of the car. I started screaming to God, God, please help me. God, I'm scared. And then I said, okay, I've done that. And I figured I'd start walking, but all of a sudden I remembered this dark curtain going down on me. And when I came to, I was crouched on the ground near my car. And I remember saying, Allison, if you pass out, you're going to die. No one is going to find you. Get up. So I got up, and the miracle was actually making my way back to the road, because I'm terrible with directions. But I made it back, and I figure I'm going to walk till I get help, go to a farm. Eventually, a car stopped. It was Randy in a red car going fishing. And he stopped, and I went up to his window, and I said, hi, my name is Allison. I'm going to a shoot. I haven't been shot. I'm from Good Morning America. And he said, I'm not from here. And I said, I'm not either. I need your help. So he pushed the door open, and I came around the front of the car, and I got in. And then he closed the door, and then he saw that I was really damaged. And he told me later he just was so frightened by seeing me come out of nowhere. I'm not sure my hair was a mess. I was bleeding. So he goes, I know a paramedic 5 towns away. So he drove, and at that point I remember my shirt was completely soaked with blood. It went down to my ankle. I'm bleeding all over his car, and I'm apologizing for his upholstery. And the next stop is there's a man in a blue robe running towards my window. He goes, the ambulance is on its way. I kind of went in and out of consciousness. Then the ambulance came. They're putting braces on me. They have no idea I've been walking. I said, you need to call Don Larson at this number and tell him I'm not showing up for the shoot. You need to call my mother at this number. She's going to be really pissed off. And now you need to give me a painkiller. And they said, we can't give you that. And I said, well, then I'm not going to talk to you. And they were rolling me into the ambulance, and it was then that it occurred to me, what did I do to myself? How much damage did I do? So I looked up in this guy's face, and I said, am I going to be okay? And he said, I hope so. And I remember thinking, that's the wrong answer. So even then, I'm trying to produce this poor guy. So what ended up happening is I stayed in Iowa for a week. They sewed my leg back on. It died. Everything above the muscle had been severed, all the nerves. It turned black. ABC flew me back to New York in a private plane. I was in the hospital for 6 weeks. They removed the whole portion of my leg. They skin grafted from my butt. I had a bone graft into my arm, which was broken in 3 places and dislocated. I had broken ribs. I had injured my pancreas. I had cuts and scrapes. But my seatbelt had saved my life from going through the roof of the car. Now, I was in therapy for 2 years to regain all my movement, and you'd think, okay, this is pretty traumatic. But the most traumatic part was that I lied about the accident. I told people I had swerved to avoid hitting an animal because I was so worried about my reputation. I was worried that I had messed up my first big assignment and that they would never give me another assignment at Good Morning America. And I lived with this lie for years. And it was like an anvil on my chest. And what I didn't realize was that they didn't care how I got into the accident. They cared how I got out of the accident. And that my reputation was fine because people knew me as someone who was a problem solver and reliable and friendly and eager to do the work. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. And it's always made me very interested in reputation and how you overcome obstacles and how you are consistent with your messaging. And as a lot of people know, well, definitely Devin knows, that I teach reputation management here. So, that story. There's a reason I told you that story. One, hopefully it caught your attention and none of you were on your cell phones. Two, it kind of showed you a life-changing moment and how it informed me moving on. It showed how I deal with adversity. It showed the origin story of creating reputation management. It was memorable, and it's a story that only I can tell. When you tell a story, what you're basically saying is, I want you to know me. I want you to know who I am and what I believe in and why I do what I do, and what my strengths are and what my quirks are, what differentiates me from somebody else. And you're trying to prove your credibility by showing your history. When you're creating your own narrative, I feel it's really important to start with a story because it's so much more interesting than data and facts. Did you know that in a presentation, you can only take away 2 to 3 facts, but you can remember an entire story? And if you can control your own narrative, others won't fill in gaps that you've left open. Also, someone can carry your story if you tell it succinctly and powerfully to someone else. And that could create opportunities for you because then maybe you'll find a mentor or an investor or a colleague. It also is a great way to connect to the audience, and it shows you at your most authentic self. So what makes a great story? Well, you want it to be rich in detail, you want it to be differentiated, authentically you, and hopefully inspire somebody. A lot of times you want to solve a problem, and that's where your origin story comes in. Because whatever you're doing in life, you need to show people why you care and where the idea came from. Who here knows about Tom's shoes? Okay, most of you, right? They're just canvas shoes. They're like 1,000 canvas shoes all over. But what made Tom's so special? Well, his story. So Blake Mykowski, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it Mykowski, he was on The Amazing Race, which is a reality show where you go to different countries and you do challenges. And he was partnered with his sister. And one of the stops was Argentina. And when he was there, he noticed they had these shoes called alpargatos, which were little canvas shoes. And when he finished The Amazing Race, he now had some money and some notoriety, but he never forgot Argentina, and he went back a few years later, and he saw a lot of the kids running around without shoes. And they were getting their feet scraped, and they were spreading disease, and he wanted to do something of value. So he decided he was going to create a shoe company based on the alpargatos, and he was going to call it Tom's, which means shoes of tomorrow. And the difference is that he decided that if you buy a pair of shoes, a kid in a developing country or a person who's in need is going to get a pair of shoes. So if any of you received the box, you get the shoes, there's a little flag on top of it, there's a little note that says, thank you for donating a pair of shoes. That's why Tom's are better or different than other canvas shoes around. It's how they tell the story. It's inspiring, it's authentic, it's solving a problem, it's rich in detail, and it's a story that only Blake can tell. Spanx, Sarah Blakely, she was here about a year ago. She's a big hero of mine. Any woman over 30, thanks Spanx. So what Sarah says with her story is never underestimate a woman who wants her butt to look good in a pair of pants. And her story is she was trying on those white pants and she didn't like the way her butt looked. So she took a pair of support hose and she cut off the pantyhose part and just put the little support part on. And she's like, ooh, I look so much better. Why isn't there a product like that? So she took $5,000 of savings that she had gotten from selling fax machines door to door, and she made a prototype. And she said everybody was saying, oh my God, what are you doing? And she cold called and went to buyers, and she was finally at Neiman Marcus, and she saw that the buyer was losing interest, so she took the buyer by the hand, took her into the bathroom, and tried on her prototype under the white pants. And the buyer said, I'll take $3,000. And that was the beginning. Again, her story is very relatable. She's solving a problem. It's rich in detail, and only Sarah can tell that story. Bombas. I picked this because I am being bombarded by Bombas. I don't know if any of you are, but the ads come up on my TV and on my computer, and I get mailings. But this is like Tom's shoes on steroids. Take a look at this.
Story of the greatest sock never sold. It's not for sale in any stores, and you can't buy it online. But somehow, we just shipped our 10 millionth pair. You may be wondering, who makes a sock that no one can buy? I'm Randy.
And I'm Dave.
And we're Bombas. Socks are the #1 most requested clothing item at homeless shelters. So for every pair of super comfortable Bombas socks you buy, we donate this pair to someone in need. They're specifically designed to meet the needs of the homeless community, with reinforced seams and antimicrobial treatment and darker colors to show less visible wear. And thanks to your purchases and support, we just donated our 10 millionth pair to shelters around the country. It's these 10 million small acts of human kindness that make this the greatest sock never sold. Give a pair when you buy a pair at bombas.com.
What I love about that is the story it tells. We've met Randy and Dave, right? We know why they care. They care about the homeless. We know what makes their socks differentiated. And the story they tell is very powerful, which is why their campaign has been so successful. When I have a student who tells me that she's been in the military and tells me about her experiences, I automatically understand the context. I say, this is a disciplined person. This is someone who's probably a leader. This is someone who knows how to take orders and knows how to give orders. This is someone who probably knows how to present herself well. And this is a person who's good with delivering results. She doesn't have to list all those qualities for me, but if she tells me a story, I'm going to intuit that just from her story and her narrative. If I have a student who was in the Olympics swimming, which I have, this is what I already know. I know that they are goal-oriented. I know they've sacrificed. I know that they're used to performing while other people watch them. And I know that they are so determined to reach that goal. So what you want to do is to increase your reputation, your executive presence, and your personal branding is to figure out what in your story is going to give these clues to people about who you are. I really believe you should have 5 stories in your pocket. And what that means is 5 stories that you can pull out at different times in your life that can illustrate who you are, what your values are, what they mean. I remember that when I came out here 20 years ago and I was trying to start a website, the CEO said to me, Allison, can you tell me of a time when you overcame something? And that was the first time I told my car accident story. And it just came from my gut. And you know what? She had been in a motorcycle accident. So we completely bonded over that. And I swear, I think that's what got me the job. She's like, I want someone who will tie up her leg to work for me. So a few months ago, I went to Qualtrics, which is a big conference, and I got to see 3 of my idols, Oprah, Obama, and Sir Richard Branson. But in between these presentations, someone else came on stage. Who, by a show of hands, knows Billy McDermott? Great. That was exactly what I was hoping. I didn't know him either. Okay, he's the CEO of SAP. And he comes out, and he looks really handsome and slick. He's got the gray and salt and pepper gray hair, and he has these sunglasses. And so while he sits down, all I can think of is, why isn't this guy removing his sunglasses? It's kind of slick and kind of smarmy. And I am so distracted that I don't listen to anything that is being said in this interview. I'm just hating on him. So I pull out my cell phone, which I really try not to do because it's so rude, just telling you. And I look him up. And it says that about 7, 8 years ago, he was walking down the stairs carrying a glass of water. He fell, and a shard of glass went into his left eye. He had all these surgeries and lost his eye. So obviously, he wears glasses. Now, I am sure that Billy does not want to tell this story every single time he goes somewhere new. But it's very important to know your audience. And because he didn't tell me his narrative, I made all these assumptions about him. What I would have suggested if I had been coaching him would have been, before he started answering Ryan's question, who was the host, to say, oh, by the way, everybody, I've had some surgeries on my eye. I need to wear glasses. Don't worry, I'm not giving you any shade. Something like that. And you know what would have happened then? It would have been a non-issue. I wouldn't have been focusing on it, and I could have concentrated on his message. So to me, it's really important to anticipate pushback and to think, how is the audience going to take this information in? If you were presenting an idea, if you were telling a story, think about where someone might be skeptical, or where someone might say, hey, that doesn't work for me, or I don't really understand, and then build in the answers ahead of time into your narrative. Be proactive so that no one is going to fill in the gaps for you. You're going to control your own narrative. So Amy Cuddy, who's famous for the power pose, wrote this book, Presence. And there was a study in this book, which I really loved, which is about a bunch of groups of entrepreneurs who are trying to get funding from VCs. What the study said was that the entrepreneurs who showed emotion, told a story, were more personable, used humor, had facial expressions, those were the ones who got the funding. The ones who just talked about data and showed graphs and were kind of linear did not get the funding. What does that tell you? It tells you that people want to connect, that they want to understand why you're doing what you're doing, that they want to like you. And it's really important, and that's all about how you tell your story. So I was sent to the Missouri floods with Good Morning America. It sounds like Good Morning America is trying to kill me, doesn't it? So they sent me to cover the floods in Missouri. And my first day, I had to get in a helicopter with my crew and take B-roll or footage. And all I saw were these houses with their tips just above the water. And it was really horrifying. And then my assignment was to go to the Red Cross shelter and find a family that would be willing to go back to their house and try to rescue either their pets or their personal belongings. So after I shot the B-roll, I went to the Red Cross shelter, and I found the head of the fire department, and I said, can I borrow a boat for my crew so we can go and take it back to one of the houses? And he said, sure. Then I had to go find someone. So I went and I saw this man standing against the wall, and his family was a little bit off to the side, and I went up to him and I said, hi, I'm Allison Kluger, I'm from Good Morning America. And I said, I have a boat and I have a crew, and would you be interested in coming back with us and seeing if we can rescue anything from your house? Well, he just started screaming at me. He's like, how dare you? How exploitive are you? This has been the worst time of my life. This is a complete tragedy. And you're going to fly out of here in 3 days and go back to your warm house, and I'm going to be here homeless. He says, this is just the worst time. And I just stood there and I took it. And I felt horrible. And when he was done telling me his story, I put my hand on his arm and I said, I am so sorry. You're absolutely right. And forgive me if I have caused you any more grief during this terrible time in your life. Please accept my apology. God bless you. And I walked away. 2 minutes later, there's a tap on my shoulder. So how would it work with the boat? Storytelling goes both ways. He needed to tell me his story. I needed to hear it. It put everything in perspective. The empathy I showed, the connection he felt to me, made him feel safe. We ended up taking him back to his house. He rescued belongings. It was a great piece. And he was actually very happy about it. Communicating effectively needs all four of these elements: connection of some sort, authenticity, credibility, and then your presence, being very present. I always say that making a first impression is not a choice, it's strategic. And I see some of my students nodding. You can make 3 impressions: positive, neutral, or negative. To make a negative first impression, you have to try. You want to be controversial, or you want to be obnoxious. But for the most part, people opt for the neutral impression. You go to a meeting, you go to a cocktail party, you go to an offsite, you go to a gathering, and you really want to be home watching Game of Thrones with Devin. I know I do. But what I look at it is that it's an opportunity, not only to connect, but to create possibilities for you. So when you go there, there needs to be some self-awareness. I believe that your brand and your reputation are tied into your executive presence and how you show up. To me, your reputation is an echo that precedes you into the room before you even get there. It can do the work for you. Oh my gosh, you need to meet Matt. He's awesome. He's one of the smartest people I know, and he's doing this project, and you're going to love him. But it's also what remains after you leave, and the little murmurs. So you're basically saying, what is left behind for people to remember? Do they want to remember that you were a good person, or a value-add person, or a funny person, or a helpful person? And what impression remains long after you've left, you may not know initially. However, somebody might come up to you and say, I remember the first time I met you. And here you are at reunion weekend, and there's going to be a lot of that, going up to old friends and saying, I remember you the first time I met you in that class. That's reputational currency, if people have something great to remember you by. How did you treat people? Did you look at them? Did you connect with them when you talked? Were you very present? Or were you looking over their shoulder to see who else is better coming into the room? What did you say? Did you just gossip? Did you just shoot the shit? Or did you add value? How can I help you with that project? Who can I connect you with that you might know? I really admire what you just did. To whom did you talk to? Did you only talk to the people who can help you? Did you only talk to the people who you know? Or did you recognize someone sitting on the fringe by themselves and you welcome them in and have a conversation? They'll never forget you. And how did you say it? When you talk, are you talking really, really fast and you're just overwhelming them and they just want you to shut up? Or are you really present in the conversation? So these are all elements of your brand, your reputation, your executive presence. And storytelling can help you connect. How was it received? You may not hear it till you come back to this reunion. But you might hear it from someone who calls you and says, my friend met you and I want to meet you for this venture. Executive presence is basically made up of 20% of what people see right away. It's a sliver. And what's unfair, like we use this iceberg analogy, is that you're feeling judged on only 20% of who you are. The rest of it's under the water, the 80%. But not a lot of people have time to spend getting to know that 80% of you. So what do you need to know? Well, you need to know that they're going to be judging you on some things that don't have to do with your intelligence, your skills, or your experience. They're going to make a snap judgment. But the good news is you can control that. So they're going to judge you on your appearance, and I'm not talking about being a supermodel. I'm talking about being appropriately dressed, or dressed with power, or dressed for the occasion, or dressed in a way that signals your brand. Your communication skills for sure. Can you connect? All the things we just talked about, and your gravitas. So I usually show a picture of a swan, and I say, what does that remind you of? And most people say elegance, calmness. But the swan has the little webbed feet underneath the water, paddling furiously. Gravitas is being the swan and not letting people see your feet. It's basically saying, I got this. I can take care of this. You're safe with me. And that's a very important element of executive presence. This is what they're going to see in that sliver. The first three, gender, age, ethnic background, you can't change. But the last four, you can. You can control your posture and how you stand. You can control your appearance. You can control your eye contact. And you can control how you talk to people. And I feel like your presence can be your most powerful tool. So now you're probably thinking, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Does this mean every time I go into a new area, I have to be so aware? I've got to stand a certain way, dress a certain way. And if I'm doing this, am I really authentic? It's a good question, isn't it? Well, when I was at Good Morning America, my first 2 months there, I was crying at work. And it wasn't about something to do with work. It was personal. And this producer, Sonia Selby Wright, who was small and English and terrifying, pulled me into her office, and she said, Allison, I don't want to ever see you crying again at work. Do you understand why? And intuitively, I knew why, and I said, uh-huh, but she told me anyway. She said, because you're young, you're attractive, and you're female, and no one is going to think you're reliable, and no one is going to give you any responsibility, and no one is going to think you're capable of doing the job you want to do. Do you understand? I'm like, mm-hmm. And she said, so if you want to cry, come into my office and close the door. But if someone says to you, how's your day? You say, I'm having a great day, thanks so much. Now get the hell out of here. And she slammed the door. And what do you think I wanted to do? Cry. But I didn't have an office then, so I couldn't cry. But this was the most impactful lesson in my life. Because what it told me is I wanted to be seen as reliable. I wanted to have responsibility. I wanted people to think I was capable. So then I decided, well, I better act that way. So I developed a reputation for being unflappable, for getting along with people, for being easygoing, for multitasking. And the funny thing is, in TV, I went to all these jobs that were so high pressure. Being on air, being on live TV, being in the control room, where anything could go wrong at a minute's notice. But I was able to handle it. And so the question of authenticity is, when you practice something every day, it becomes authentic to you. So it doesn't matter where you are right now. If there's a way that you want to be, you can just tweak it. And you can start doing it every day, and then it becomes authentic to you. So for you, I say act like the leader that you want to be. And maybe there's someone around you who's a role model who you think handles everything really well. What is it about that leader that you like? Can you emulate it? Maybe you're someone who's always late. Maybe you should show up on time and keep doing that, right? Maybe you don't talk as much in meetings. Force yourself to say one thing at each meeting. Maybe you volunteer to give a seminar or take on some new responsibilities. But starting to do something different will help you make it more naturally. So I teach this course that I created called Strategic Pivoting for Your Next Chapter. And I teach it with Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod, who's our featured guest speaker. And I'm so happy he joined me because he's someone who has strategically pivoted through his life, from a baseball icon to a philanthropist, an investor, a host, a commentator. And he's been very strategic about it. What I loved about this class is I used this book by Jenny Blake called Pivot, and she has a framework that is so easy to learn. And a lot of it does involve your narrative, but these are the 4 steps. It's plant, scan, pilot, and launch. Planting means you just assess, who are you? What are you good at? Because whatever you pivot into, you're going to take the same skills with you. You're not going to reinvent the wheel. Even if it's a completely new area, there's still a part of you that is responding to this area because of the talents and the strengths you already have. The next step, which is plant, is figuring out where your knowledge gaps and how do you fill them. Do you take a course? Do you take a seminar? Do you shadow someone? Do you offer to intern somewhere? Do you have dinners with people who can help you and guide you? You also have to figure out how to broadcast your new direction. Because if you want to pivot, if you don't tell people, they're not going to be able to help you. So it's important to figure out, how are you going to broadcast this change? Are you going to have a small dinner and tell people, this is what I plan to do? Are you going to send out an email? Are you going to make a little video? Whatever it is, or put it on social media, you've got to let people know what you're doing so that they can help you. And you also have to learn how to tell your story about it. Finally, there's piloting, small little incremental experiments to see if it fits, if it feels good. So, and the purpose really is to get data. So you might fail, it may not go the way you want. This is what beta testing is, right? But it's a good idea to at least try it. Do you have a financial runway? Have you figured it out? There are ways to also do this. You can go on Craigslist or one of these other sites where you say, I'd like to do a project for a very low price, and someone will hire you to try your side hustle, and then you can leverage that for your pivot. Lots of creative ways to step into your pivot. And then finally, you launch. But there's a lot of iteration and reiteration of those 3 steps before you actually launch your new direction. This is hard to read, but I'm putting this up because this is an actual letter that I received from one of my friends. He wanted to pivot, and he sent me this email, and I was BCC'd, so I know that he sent it to tons of people, basically saying what his talents were as a CEO, what he was looking for, what he's done. But the last line, please feel free to share my CV with appropriate parties, and I can be reached at my cell. He did exactly what you need to do, because every time I see something that could fit him, I send it his way. If he hadn't done this, how would I know? It's important to use your origin story to create your own narrative. We did Tom's, we did Sarah. I'm going to talk about mine a little bit, even though Devin filled you in. New York City girl, went to Penn. I always worked at TV stations on my free time. Hired at Good Morning America 3 days after graduation. I stayed there for 8 years. I was promoted 3 times within, went to a lot of disaster zones. They didn't kill me. And after 8 years, I hit my proverbial ceiling. So then I was invited to go to Q2, which is part of QVC. It was started by Barry Diller and Diane von Furstenberg, and it was a home shopping network. I really thought that was it for me in my career. I'm going into Cheeseville. But they paid me twice as much money, and so I went. The host quit. I was going there to produce all the home products, and they said, you go on air. I was like, uh-oh. But then I realized, what are my skills? What have I been doing for 8 years? I've been coaching people to be on TV. I've been helping them message. I've been helping them tell their story. So I went on air, and I would do 4 hours of TV a day. And I would sell 20 items in each hour. And this is where I honed my storytelling skills. I had to convince people to buy a barbecue or a pot or a gardening gnome. And I'm telling you, that's challenging. So you have to demonstrate and tell a story. It was the best education I ever had on how to message. And then they got a new host, and I went into the control room where I wanted to be. This was awesome for me. I got to control the whole show. All the talent wanted me to produce them because I had been a talent, and I knew how to talk to them in their ear. I was gentle, I was encouraging, all the things I wanted someone to be for me. But this was awesome because I got to figure out if something was selling, if something wasn't, how I would, in the moment, switch the show around. Again, another great education. And then I went to a new shopping network called GSN. It was 16 hours of live television. I was the executive producer. I hired people, fired them. I managed 100 people. I created new shows. And I became kind of the face of the network. And I did these promos where I have to message in 30 seconds what something was about. So take a look.
Hi, I'm Allison Kluger, your host for Designers Corner here at GSN. We get New York City designers to bring in their jewelry, and all the jewelry is like a piece of art. Each one is handcrafted with semi-precious stones, unique designs, and you can't find it anywhere else. You don't have to wander around the streets downtown looking for that very special piece of jewelry. We're going to bring it to you. We're going to bring you the piece of jewelry that's beautiful, interesting, that you can't find anywhere else with a price that you can afford. So be sure to catch me here at GSN, the Smart Shoppers channel.
Right? So, thank you. So cheesy, but I bet some of you want that piece of jewelry, don't you? I know you do. I actually still own that. So after I worked there, The View came calling. And now I'm back at ABC at higher stakes. I'm in the control room with Barbara in my ear, and Star and Meredith and Lisa Ling and Debbie Matenopoulos, and this was a dream job. And I really enjoyed it, but then my husband, who's sitting right there, wanted to go to Stanford Graduate School of Business, and he made me move. And I left the best job, and I came here. I started up, don't be embarrassed, honey. And I started up a website for women, and we were a .com disaster a year later. And then Open TV snapped me up because when you fail, you really succeed. And I was executive producer of Interactive Applications. All of these jobs tapped into my television skills. And the story that I'd always tell is how to create great content, how to coach people. So it didn't matter where I was going in my pivots. I would adjust my story, but I'd still focus in on what my strengths were. And then I worked with Al for a year and helped him start up Current TV, and it was really an amazing opportunity to work with him. The day that I finished my consultancy, I found out I was pregnant after 9 in vitros, and I stayed home for 7 years, and I raised trouble and more trouble. More trouble's right there. Hide, more trouble. And then I also did some media consulting on the side just to keep my foot in the door. But I'm going to tell you that for 7 years, I really didn't work that much. So then I came to this, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. What the hell am I going to do? Who am I? What is my story? And I was like, I don't want to go back and do all the same things. But I had to just repackage myself. And so this is what I did. I figured out, well, what's my narrative? What are my strengths? Those are the things I do really well. I coach people. I create innovative content. I message effectively. I present publicly. And I'm great across all different platforms. So I had to repackage myself. And I came up with a proposal of a course I wanted to teach here. And my husband sent my proposal to one of his professors. He introduced me to J.D. Schrom, who we all know, worship, and love. And J.D. said, I'll take a chance on you. and we created reputation management strategies for successful communicators, and teaching it for the 6th year now. When I finished the, thank you. Under that, then I was invited to co-teach strategic communication. Under that umbrella, I developed electives for media training, executive presence for women, and then Tyra came. So I was sitting right there in seat 110, and Tyra was here talking about her life and her personal brand. And she talked about how she pivoted from being a supermodel on the runway to getting curvy and being a Victoria's Secret model, to being the first African-American model on the cover of Sports Illustrated, to being an actress, to being an author, to being a roving reporter for Oprah, to having her own talk show called The Tyra Show. Then from developing and creating America's Next Top Model, which had 23 cycles, going to Harvard for a 9-week OPM degree, and then creating Tyra Beauty. Just some of the things she did. I'm sitting there, my brain's going crazy, I'm learning so much about personal branding, I'm thinking, I've got to teach with her. So when it's over, I go backstage and there's a guard, and I say, hi, I'd like to go in. And he said, you're not allowed in here. I said, oh, no, I am. I said, I teach here, and I used to produce The View and Good Morning America, and Tyra's been on those shows. Boom, let me in. Very short narrative, but it worked. And I go in, and I meet Tyra, and I just give her my short spiel, or narrative. I'm like, Tyra, I'm a television producer by trade. I produced Good Morning America and The View. I teach here now, and I listen to you. And in that hour, I learned more about personal branding than I have ever learned before. And I have an idea of wanting to teach a compressed course with you. Would you be interested? And fortunately, her agent was there. She gave me their number. We made a phone call for the next week. And in that week, I just started putting that proposal together. And I said to myself, how am I going to make this course really serve my students? How is it going to be innovative? I'm going to stream it live on Facebook. We're going to come live out of a television station. I'm going to have to, what can Tyra add to it? Who are the guests that we're going to book? So I had everything in order, and when I called her, I had all the dates for compressed courses available. I had all 6 classes already kind of fashioned out, and I said, Tyra, what do you want to do? What do you want to teach in this? And she gave me all these great ideas. We collaborated, and then I went back and redid the proposal. Then I went to the assistant dean of the business school, and I said to him, I want to teach a course with Tyra Banks. This is why it's going to be great. This is why it's going to be innovative. This is how we're going to serve our students. This is what they're going to learn from it. Tyra is committed for either this 2 weeks or this 2 weeks. She's going to be there for all 6 classes. We're going to come live out of a television studio. We're going to stream live on Facebook. And I just told my narrative. And I explained my vision through my story. And he said yes. Now I'm going to say something. If I had gone to him the day after Tyra and said, I think I'd like to teach with Tyra Banks, I know in my heart that categorically the answer would have been no. Because people would say, that's not the brand here. We don't want Tyra teaching here. But I knew she was an amazing businesswoman and educator, and she proved it out. We just finished teaching Project U for the 3rd year in a row. And this is my secret weapon. When you're creating a narrative, present the solution, not the suggestion. Remember what I said about anticipating pushback. I anticipated everything the dean might say to me. We don't do this. I know you don't, but that's why it's going to be great. Tyra's a supermodel. No, she's not. She's a businesswoman. Look what he's created. Everything that I was expecting, I got, but I had an answer for it. So when you're creating your story and your narrative, think about anticipating what someone can say and then come up with the answers ahead of time. And there's Tyra. I'm the one on the left. That's Tyra in our 1st year, and that was us just a few weeks ago in the TV station. And she's going to come back next year. Woo-hoo! So what does a narrative sound like? Well, I'm going to share it with you. I had 2 classes where the final project in strategic pivoting for your next chapter and Project U, my students had to come up with an either 2-minute or 1.5 minute pitch. So for strategic pivoting, they have to tell me who they are, where they come from, what their talents are, where they want to pivot to, and why they're going to be great. So let's go take a look at one of my students and what he did for his pitch.
Hi everyone, my name's Thomas, and as the accent may already have given away, I'm originally from the UK. Prior to coming here to Stanford Business School, I worked in London in private equity. I'm here today to talk about my pivot to social impact, and specifically within that, to impact investing, which I think brings those two things together perfectly. My passion for social impact started when I had the experience of speaking at my grandfather's funeral. That day, as I stepped up to the lectern and I looked out at hundreds of faces, I realized what it is to live a fulfilling life. And it's to make a positive impact on the lives of people you touch. As I ask myself, what does it all add up to? That is what I hold in my mind. How can I make sure every interaction I have positively changes the lives of others? I think I'm set up to be a great impact investor because I'm a fast learner and I'm extremely adventurous. In my prior roles, I've had to learn about industries I hadn't even heard of and just weeks later be an expert. In investing, we covered such a range of sectors, from asset to waste management. And my adventurous side keeps me going to new cultures and new places all the time. I love nothing more than connecting with people, understanding what drives them, and what makes their cultures so special. I believe these skills will enable me to venture into developing markets where they could benefit so fundamentally from fresh financial capital, which will give them future economic prosperity. I've been fortunate to already start to pilot this change in my life. This summer, I spent 3 months in Israel and then Kenya, and I got to be really excited about going to work every day with a purpose. We were trying to empower rural farmers in Kenya and trying to redefine the financial market in Israel. And that purpose is what I want to carry with me through my life. So as I now think about what does it all add up to, it's that. How do I make a positive impact on the lives of others for the rest of my career? Thank you very much, and I look forward to all of your comments.
So the next part, which I'm not showing you, is where I give him feedback on his communication skills. Alex gave him feedback on the business idea of what he wants to do. And Jenny Blake, the author of Pivot, talked about how he used the frameworks from the book. And what I love about this, it's only 2 minutes. It might have seemed longer, but he's going to use this narrative in a lot of different iterations. He'll shorten it, he'll tweak it, he'll edit it, and he will focus on certain areas of it depending on his audience. But he knows now how to give his narrative. We knew his origin story, we knew he's adventurous, we knew why he cares about social impact, and we know what he wants to do. And now that he can express it, it's going to be easier to take his story and pass it on. Let's take a look at one more. This is from Project G with Tyra, and this is one of my students, Nancy.
Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Nancy, and I love to live life out loud. From the necklaces I love to rock, to the melanin I proudly wear on my skin, color and vibrancy is such a huge part of who I am. But it hasn't always been that way. I was born with a disability in my arm and my spinal cord called Klemke's palsy. Before I even knew my name, doctors put limits on what I could achieve when they told my parents I could never live independently. But I refused to believe that, and I rebelled. I saw how vibrant I could be, and I grew a passion for helping other people see their own vibrancy through photography. Photography has shown me that I'm so much bigger than this body, and it's allowed me to connect with people in deep and intimate ways. I built my company, Okosa & Co., to share the stories of women of color. It's been my absolute honor to share their vibrancy with the world. And it's my big, hairy, scary dream to take this company from being about photography to a lifestyle brand. Think cookware and interior design, but designed with the needs and wants of women in color in mind. I want to help other women expose their true color in every aspect of their lives.
That pitch to me had everything. We learned so much about Nancy in a minute and a half. We know that she's overcome adversity. We know what she wants to do in her life. We know why she wants to do it. And you can see all the strengths and unique characteristics, and she presents so beautifully. She knows her story from beginning to end. And I feel so confident that anyone who sees that would want to hire her. And I feel confident that she's going to absolutely accomplish what she sets out to do. And that was the power of her story and her narrative, and she controlled it beautifully. So I'm just going to take a moment and read this. This was one little paragraph I got from the final papers, and it really says everything. Once we understand our substance, we can then create a compelling narrative around it, one that excites, compels, and explains who we are. Watching everyone's final pitches on the last day of class has shown me firsthand the remarkable power of a good story. In sharing their journeys, I was able to understand the logic of their passions, and I immediately felt closer to them. Through storytelling, we are able to offer more facets of ourselves for others to connect with, and in doing so, we can build trust and understanding. I'm going to have her write my first book review, because that really encapsulates what the whole point of the course was about, and what I really believe in controlling your narrative, connecting to people. So whether you realize it or not, I had 5 stories in my pocket today, and I shared them all with you. One of them was about the Field of Dreams, which told you a lot about almost a foolish, risky thing I did when I was younger, but how I overcame it. And then the Missouri floods, where I learned how important human connection is, and storytelling goes both ways. Sonia, who taught me to be the leader that I need to be and want to be, and show up every day being consistent. I talked about pivoting from media to education and how you can leverage all your natural talents in one area and bring them to another. And I had the connection between media and education, how it worked. And then finally, everybody wants to know how Tyra got here. So I had to tell you how Tyra got here. The most important thing is I'm hoping after this time that you have a sense of who I am, that you know who I am and why I care about what I do and what differentiates me from other people. And you know more about my credibility and you feel more connected to me, and that I've convinced you how important it is to own your narrative. What are your 5 stories? Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Spencer Smith, a class of 2009, you talked about how stories go both ways in the example of the Missouri floods and the reaction you got from the man when you walked up to him to make an ask. Coming out of that, have you thought about how do you solicit someone's story ahead of time so that they don't have an explosive reaction necessarily, but that you can have that one-on-one to get their story, hear from them, and then be able to tell your story to connect with them?
It's a great question, and it goes back to anticipating the pushback. If I had been more experienced and had even thought about it a little bit more, I would have approached him in a different way. I would have said, I know this is probably the worst time in your life, and you don't want to talk to me right now. And I said, I'm here to do a piece, and I really actually want to help you. And I've got a boat, and if it would help you in any way during this terrible time, would you like to go back and take a look at your house and see if you can rescue things? I know you've got so much on your mind, and this may be the last thing you want to do, but if this in any way can aid you, I would love to be part of that solution. Now I've learned that, how to approach people, but it's knowing your audience ahead of time, doing some research, and again, anticipating how they might react to your content. It's using your emotional intelligence and taking a little bit of time to prep. I hope that helped.
In the process of pivoting to the next chapter of your life, were there moments when you doubted yourself, and whether there were fear of the uncertainties in the future, and how did you handle those emotions?
Thank you for the question. I doubted myself every single step of the way. I had imposter syndrome with every single job. I was waiting to be found out. I hated my husband on many occasions for pushing me out of my comfort zone. And what I say to people is that double down on what you know you're good at. And it's how you tell your narrative. So if you're pivoting and people say, well, you came from there, that's totally disconnected to where you want to go. And you say, I know that. I did this for this reason. And then you tell a story. And you say, I know what I realized through these years is it's not fulfilling this passion I have inside of me. But these skills that I learned here are going to be so helpful and informative as I move into this new area. And I'm going to be even better at this job with you because of this experience. So a lot of it is how you change your narrative. And for me, a lot of it was knowing my audience and saying, I'm going into this new area. I'm telling you, when I went into the website, into digital, I was just like, I'm not a technical person. I just play one on TV. I don't know anything. But I was really good at managing people. I was good at asking questions. I was good at research. So I would double down on what I was good at, and the things I didn't, I would help fill the knowledge gaps with asking for help, being really transparent, or going into my office crying and then figuring it out. I hope that helps. Anybody else?
Thank you so much. I'm Paul Chen, class of 2014. I lived first half of my life in China, second half of my life in America. And the tension between these two countries is making me feel confused at best and depressed at worst. How do you tell your story in a larger context where people increasingly hate each other? Thank you.
That's a really big question. And I'm going to try to answer that thoughtfully. I had a talk with one of my alums this morning about cultural differences and assumptions, right, Matt? And this is what I believe. It's all about connection and finding common ground. So small talk is important, asking questions is important, and being transparent is important. So when you're going up against somebody who maybe is from a different culture or is coming with stereotypes of you, it's your job to tell your story in a way that shows empathy and understanding and credibility. Again, assuming that they might have pushback. So saying, you might not trust me so much. I'm from America. We seem very mercenary. We don't value these things. But the truth is, I come from here as well. And that's part of who I am and part of my DNA. And what I've learned in America is this. So I can put both of these together and be this hybrid and be even effective in America and in China. So again, it's how do you twist your story in a positive way to show your empathy, your trustworthiness, your credibility. But it's about building bridges. It's about finding a common ground and asking them about it or sharing and also being vulnerable. Thank you so much.